started. Okay, hello students. Welcome to session 2 of the poetry workshop. Remember, watch both poets and then do the worksheet that has been emailed to you. All right, our first poet today is James Coates, and I'm going to bring up his poetry. If James, you want to say anything to students before we start, go ahead. Show them your shirt.
Hello students.
Hey.
Go Trojans.
That's a good start. That's a good start. Okay. And now I got to find those poems. Here they are. Share screen. Poems, poet. Ta-da! Okay, go ahead and introduce your first poem, James, and read it.
Okay, this first poem is Kintsugi. Distress lines. I thought it was my fault. Somehow I was born a cracked egg, a little broken from the beginning, and those fissures made earthquakes of the structure I was hoping to create. Me, a disaster, as natural as volcanic eruptions, hidden in warning signs and caution tape holding me together, waiting to topple apart, trying to repair damage through aftershocks, knowing any day could be the big one. I have to give myself a fighting chance, even as my world crumbles to rubble. These reckless thoughts scatter pieces of me like Legos in a petulant toddler's hands. I'm still learning to be gentle with myself. Never wanted to be anyone's burden, but I realize survival takes a team, access to healthcare, therapy, and treatments, a network of help and support opportunities, loved ones, and people believing in me. Searching through the wreck, dust, and debris, I inherited a rocky foundation, but can renew, given the proper tools to dig the gold out of my tissue, construct my mind to make gems of my messy. I'm not alone, no matter how isolated I feel. It's okay to take moments to heal fractures, and I'm still screaming to hold on to life, to hope. Tragedy doesn't have to be the end of my story, rather a chapter, the monster I slay or mountain I climb one step at a time until I am once again made whole.
Woo, 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 woo. Hey, so right off, one of the things I love about James Coates' poetry is its metaphorical qualities. You look up here, you have the start of the second stanza, me, a disaster as natural as volcanic eruptions. Masterful metaphor there. Even in the first stanza, you look at the second line, somehow I was born a cracked egg. Leading up to the volcano. And then the third stanza, like Legos in a petulant toddler's hands. That's a simile. Pieces of me like Legos in a petulant toddler's hands. So you really got some metaphorical skills there, Mr. Coates. Love it, love it.
Thank you.
Let's go to the next poem.
So this poem is a Pantone titled A Movement to Stand In. Bodies built bold and brazen, temples to connect us to God within. Start righting the wrongs, love. Worship in this radiance. Within temples to connect us to God, worthy of bellowing praise. Worship in this radical, in being found treasure. Worthy of bellowing praise, let confidence flow naturally. Treasure found in being, born like dawn's light, serenity. Naturally, confidence flows, lost in time moments, serenity born like dawn's light. Revolutions embrace the movement. In moments lost, love start righting the wrongs. Embrace the movement. Bold and brazen bodies built revolutions.
Yeah. Well, I know the students are going to be asking right away, what's a Pantone? You want to tell them?
It is a specific type of form where certain lines repeat. So it doesn't have to be complicated, but there is a formal structure involved.
Yeah, I'm looking at it and I see that fourth line appears as the third line in the second stanza, right?
The fourth
That-
line,
In the
yes.
first stanza, yeah. So the
Mhm.
fourth becomes the third.
Hmm.
And then in the next stanza, it looks like,
And the second becomes the first.
yeah,
Yeah, and then you keep going and building the layers the same way, where the second and fourth becomes the first and the third in the next stanza.
woo,
And then in the last one, you bring in the the first line is your ending line.
right, right.
Yeah.
So it goes full circle.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty crafty. How do you feel about that? Do you like using forms like this?
Yeah, I like just the forms kind of holding the poem. So it's fun to explore within the confines of the form. And so I when I bring poetry to my the class I'm in, poetry class, they're often like, you're bringing these new poems, you're bringing bops, and you're bringing pantoons, and you're bringing sestinas. So it's really cool to get a variation of different forms to play with.
Yeah, that's what I guess people call going outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's fun to explore different possibilities when it comes to
Yeah.
poetry.
And you can always create your own too. I took a class where I learned about the bop, and the teacher challenged us to create our own, and so I created two of my own kind of poem forms.
Did you give them names?
Yeah, so one is like it's like a reverse duplex, and so I call it a suplex.
All right.
Um, and then the other one, it's kind of like a sestina, but it's in uh, four line stanzas, and you pick four words um,
Okay.
that you start with, um, and so you have to use those uh,
In a
in a
similar
certain
way
way.
to the
Yeah,
sestina, right?
to
Yeah,
the
because the
sestina.
sestina
Yeah.
is 6 words, 6 times,
Mhm.
36 lines, and then it has a final envoy using all 6 words in the envoy.
Yeah, and so in the
Yeah.
end, and so in mine, the same way, you got to use all four words in the last line.
Yeah. So it's
Um,
a
I call it the four kings. Like, I don't know if you know that card trick where it's like you put the kings in the deck and then they all appear at the top.
that's fantastic. I love it. It makes me want to try it. Yeah, because sestina, wow, that is. I've had one very successful sestina, and I was kind of happy. Okay, did it. Moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Wow, that's more than the students want to know. But it's the poem itself has something to say as well. This one just seems to be it's just lyrical. It's lyrical.
Yeah,
That's
it's about
beauty of language, right? Yeah.
yeah, it was just about you know, loving your body. So I wrote this one after reading Your Body Is Not an Apology, the book, and
Mhm.
I really felt like, we should be praising our bodies for as they are.
And the other thing that hit me right when you were saying that, I was looking at the lines and I saw some alliteration going on, especially that first line is a great example. Bodies built bold and brazen. And then you've got the W effect in the second stanza.
Mm-hmm.
Within temples worthy of bellowing praise, worship. Uh, that just seems to happen, right? It just seems to happen. I don't know
Yeah.
how to explain it. Do you know how to explain it? I know how to explain it. All right, we'll move on then to the third poem because of time limitations here. I've only got 10 more minutes with you. Oh yeah, this is the one I was waiting for. Oh yes.
So this one is titled Hair Care. Let the hair down, free to be you. Let the curls flow and do what they do. Run your fingers through it. like stroking a lion's mane. And though ours may look similar, no two will be the same. Isn't that a joy to be so unique? Get all creative and display it on fleek. See, it's perfect, like the glow of your skin. And I love my crop blowing in the wind. Though I feel natural is how I like mine best, at times you may want to add a little zest. Hair only adds to your beauty, enhancing your natural appeal. It's not the source of it that comes from how you feel. Now, yours may be long and silky or short and thick like mine, but don't believe all the hate. There's no such thing as fine, no good or bad, only what you got. And if you wear it proudly, you will make it hot. Whether it's waves or curls, an afro with rainbow swirls, locked or layered, beaded or braided, bald or faded, makes no difference. It's your choice and personal appearance. No need for anyone else's clearance. So make your style known and love the hair you own.
Woo, 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 woo. Why am I always doing that after James Coates' poems? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, when I saw what this poem was about, right away it made me think about a poem I wrote 1,000 years ago when I was a young man like you, about my beard.
Mm.
Yeah, and it was such a joy to write that poem. This poem gives me that same joy. I'll tell you this, honestly, I turned around honestly to a poem and one word, I was like, what is that? And I'm sure maybe it's a generation thing. I have no idea. You go to the second stanza, second line, and it says, display it on fleek. What is that?
That's like slang term for just like fresh, like um, being cool.
I feel so old.
Yeah, it's not a term I would normally use in my everyday conversation,
Yeah.
but part of this poem was inspired by um, my son and other people that have been teased or bullied for their hair. So he had a very short hairstyle
Mm,
in middle school, like a bald fade, and so many of the kids there had longer hair, and so they teased him, call him bald headed because of his haircut,
yeah,
and
he's different.
it being different. And so that was part of the reason I was like, well, we need to celebrate, you know, the
Oh,
variety of complex hair and hairstyles we have. And um, I'm on my natural journey right now, so mine is braided. It's a little longer than when I wrote the poem, but yeah.
well, yeah, appearance is a double-edged sword. It really is. Some people like it, some people don't. I remember when I first went to Antioch University in 2011 for my master's degree, and I met Tanya there.
Mhm.
And the thing that really threw me, I'm meeting all these artistic people and everything, and right away, people take one look at me and they labeled me the nerd.
Mm.
Oh my God. I couldn't believe this was happening such a place, but seems society has its labels. It's trying to compartmentalize everybody.
Yeah, quick
But we
judgment.
were all writers, we're all poets. It's a shame that had to happen. It made me feel like some of my opportunities were limited because of that, because I was pigeonholed right away. But I fought
Mhm.
to overcome that. But
Yeah.
enough about me and my personal pain.
Well, thankfully in California, they passed a law that allows, people to wear their natural hair and not be punished in
Really,
for the world in court.
and that they have to even have a law to do that. That just boggles my mind. Uh,
Yeah.
what's out the prejudice out there?
Yeah.
Well, I've got like 4 more minutes with you. I just want to take another peek at this poem because every one of your poems has got something worth mentioning. Fleek hit me because I didn't know what it was, but I didn't let it bother me enough to take me out of the poem. Definitely not, because when you have stuff like, these are your money lines. You have in the first stanza, you have run your fingers through it like stroking a lion's mane, and I'm just there going, yes. And in the second stanza, you have the lines after Fleek really redeem the poem for me. It's perfect, like the glow of your skin. And I love my crop blowing in the wind. And those are just gorgeous. That's gorgeous, really fine. And then the third stanza is where you start bringing in all the choices. Yeah, people like what they like, and well, that's the way. The world is full of different looks. And in the fourth stanza there, it really brings that home. See, I know what faded hair is, okay? That's after my time, but I know what faded hair is. It's a cool look.
Yeah.
I don't think I can pull it off, but
Yeah, I
you
don't
have
know.
to learn to love your own
You might
hair.
have to go to the right barber. They could hook you up.
Yeah. So, well, I'm so glad you wrote this poem. I'm so glad the students get to see this poem. This is really a poem that's going to touch everybody. So thank you so much for that. I've got a couple more minutes here. I want to ask you some questions. I know the students would have questions. Like number one, they always ask, they want to know, why do you do poetry?
I do poetry because I think it's the voice of the universe told through the human experience. And so what that means is that there's so many stories that are important that people aren't always able to tell. And so I feel like it's a poet's job to find those stories and to share them with the world so that people can feel seen and connected.
So poetry is a great way to do that, right? It's different. It has an artistic element you don't find in regular writing. And everyone, all the old people I ever met told me, oh yeah, poetry was the first form of communication or something. Or
Yeah. When I started, I didn't really have an opportunity to freely express like my feelings at the time. This was before, they had therapists in school that you could talk to about whatever's going on. And so poetry was definitely an outlet to get what I had inside out when I didn't have anyone specifically to talk to.
oh, amen to that. And every poet I've ever known has told me that. And it's so true about poetry. Even if you write poetry just for yourself, it's an outlet. It really is. Good point. And so I've got a minute here to ask you the other famous question, but this is the teacher question. And that is, what advice would you give a young writer?
Very simple. I would say read every day, write every day. That's part of the motto of the CLI program that I'm in, Community Literature Initiative. Read every day, write every day. So once you start writing, you're a writer. How good of a writer you become depends on if you're willing to put in the work. And so that means you got to sit down and write and read other great writers so you can constantly improve.
Yes, it's safe for me to say that I know for me, and I think it's true for everybody, that reading a poem made me fall in love with poetry.
Yes.
And then I tried it, And so I was just determined to do the best I could because this other stuff just blew me away, right? So thank you, James, I'm just going to assume my students are blown away because this wonderful poetry. I've been a fan of yours since I first heard you. And there's another poet here who I'm also a fan of. I first met her at Antioch University in Los Angeles. And right away, I knew this is somebody who has something to say and a great way of saying it. And so I'm going to segue now into our second poet, Tanya Ko Hong, which means I'm going to go searching for Tanya's poems real quick while Tanya says something introductory. Go ahead, Tanya, show them your USC shirt.
Well, I don't have ESC shirts, but hi, James. That was just beautiful. I wanted to say that was just like amazing, beautiful. And Don, are you having a hard time to finding poem? Waiting right there. So James, thank you so much for sharing. That was just amazing poems. And here, I'm gonna read it to you, Waiting First. When I think of you, rain comes. When I call you, you come in rain. When I touch you, you disappear in rain. Bring me raw garlic and a handful of bitter green wormwood. I will eat them and stay in a cave 21 days, 100 days. That's how bear became woman. I will do the same if I can see you one last time. There is another myth. When you fold 1,000 paper cranes, your dream comes true. If I can see you one last time, I will fold thousands, 10,000 paper cranes. I want to open your apartment door again with the key that you sent by mail. The key is still warm from your hand. I want to hang my clothes in your closet, between your clothes. I want to feel safe there again. Waiting for you is nothing. Without blinking, I watch. The night become silver rain in the blue light. I will wait for you like a rock on the waterline, wishing you to be a wave and reach me. If you touch, I will collapse and be water like you.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
So in this poem, I just wanted to share with you just a couple things, how this poem, the waiting title, ties with the mythology of the how Korean mythology. So you might say like waiting, why, what the raw garlic and bit of green wormwood will do it, and then why is a bear and why is a cave? And if you Google Korean mythology, that is how the Gojoseon, Korean previous country, star built it. So it's a mythology that there is a god, and then there's a tiger and bear came to the god, say, we want to be a human. And then so God said, okay, here is a raw garlic and then green wormwood. If you eat 100 days in the cave, then you'll become a human.
Wow.
So tiger couldn't stay, but bear did. So bear became a beautiful woman, and the god decided to become a human too. So then they have a son. It's a Dangun. And so Dangun is the first ancestor of Korea at the time called Gojoseon. That's how the Korea started. That's our mythology believing in Korea. And of course, another myth, you think like, you're making 1,000 paper cranes, your dream comes true, Valentine is coming soon. So you maybe, I don't know, maybe one of you folding, 1,000 paper cranes to give to, your loved one. I don't know.
Oh, that
then
one I've
hope
heard of.
that-
That's very legendary, the paper cranes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's famous.
And while I was
Wow.
even reading it, and then I thought, maybe I start doing something like that too. And so that's very important. And so like one of the things while I'm reading, like I wrote this poem a couple years ago, but it changes. When the poet wrote a poem and then send it out, and you think it's gonna be stay same. No, I changed my mind. Now, after that, like this poem, I wanted to not waiting. It's me wanted to be in the person. So isn't it weird? But yeah, it was like, I want to open your apartment door again. I wanted to open my apartment door again, my apartment. And I wanted to have the key you sent by mail. No, I want to have a key to my own key. So, I mean, that's another story, but what I'm trying to say to you, you could think about the mythology you believe in, and then you could put it in there. And while you're listening to this poem, maybe you could just jot down what you hear, like maybe paper cranes or hand, like whatever resonate to you. And then you could write down on the side, and then you can start writing the poem. What do you think?
I'm willing to do that right now.
Yeah.
You know, there's some, you have very sensual details. They're very sensory, right? The key is still warm from your hand, right?
Right.
That's very sensory. Gets the senses going. And then you have a very lyrical line in that next to last stanza, in the penultimate stanza, that says, "The night becomes silver rain and blue light," which is just a lovely image. Lovely. It's not just visually rich, but it's emotionally rich. And
And
then,
it takes forever to come up with that line.
yeah, you know, I've learned a little bit about that working with you.
Yeah.
And then the last line of the whole poem, which is, right, the best line, maybe, I don't know. "I will collapse and be water like you." Oh my God, that is just so total. Yeah, that moved me very greatly, very greatly. It's like there's myth out there and there's also personal myth, right? You can create your own personal mythology of your life. That's what this poem makes me feel. And I got to move on to the next poem, but that was just so wonderfully resonant. Really made
Thank
me
you.
feel a lot. And this poem's a little shorter here, though. Let's see how this one goes.
Yeah. So I don't know if the students know, but I came from Korea. So I want to read this poem, not in Korean there first, but I'm gonna read the Korean first. It's a short poem. And it's important to open your ear to hear different languages. And especially we're living in LA. I'm in New York at this moment. But I mean, even here in New York, I hear so many different languages. It's very important to open your ear, open your heart to hear another language. And that's what poetry helps us get connect, even though the different language. So I'm gonna read to you Korean first. 둘째 시간, 어두운 방으로 불려갔다. 창이 없는. 미세스 로페츠가 그림책을 보여주었다. 강, 내가 말한다. 틀렸어. river라고 그녀가 말한다. river, 내가 말한다. river가 아니라니까. river, 그녀가 말한다. 그렇게 말했어요. river, 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 river. 강, 강이에요. 그녀가 고개를 흔든다. 내 입을 봐. river, river. 그 후로 나는 입을 다물었다. Second period. A little dark room, windowless. Mrs. Lopez showed me a picture book. Kang. No, river, she says. Liver, not liver. That's a river. That's what I said. Liver, liver. Kang. It's a Kang. She shook her head. Look at my mouth, she says. River, river, I say. Then shut my mouth. So I still sometimes, a lot of times, have like a hard time correct pronunciation with R and L, and I do. And
yeah, I'm laughing only because I'm recognizing this problem.
with your, a lot of your
Every kid
students.
has a problem with something. I mean, when I was, well, okay, more personal revelation. I didn't speak until I was 4 years old.
Aha, okay.
Not until I was 4. That's probably because my mother spoiled me so rotten.
Mm.
You know, you could just point. And when I went to school, that was a major problem. That was a major problem because I couldn't pronounce things correctly. And I had to go to a speech therapist in kindergarten just to learn to pronounce. So I had a serious problem there. But enough about my personal pain. Ha ha ha.
Yes. So then,
let me say one thing. Oh yeah, hold on.
The Gang is the Korean word of river, and then I even include the Chinese letter, the Gang there, over there. I don't know if you could go fourth line, Gang and then Gang. And so a lot of times river sounds like liver, right? And we know that's a totally different sound. And the last thing is that like shut my mouth, means that's a lot of immigrant people that like if they don't pronounce right, and then if you keep saying what, and then they're just shut their mouth, meaning it's just very hard to share, and then they get hard time. So as we all great human being, that we need to be open our ears and listen, and then understand each other. What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I did with this poem. But to me, the most righteous part of this poem is when you say Kang. It's a communication. See, I said it wrong. Communication is a two-way street, right? There's not just one language in the world. I've learned that from experience, right? But this poem is teaching that lesson, right? This is real experience. This is a factual poem. Second period in a little dark room, windowless. Oh my gosh. You put people right in the setting, and then they experience what you went through.
Yeah, and then also, and I am like just assuming that like I am a high school student, and then came from all different cultural background, and then go to like the room, and then because learning language is not easy, and here you are very high level intelligence, but yeah, you get the picture book and say gone, you know what I mean? So it is learning second language is hard. I mean, I think it just really changes different perspective. When you learn another language, that makes feel like they're more open about it. But like learning English is like almost survival. And then also everybody speak English. So it's just different atmosphere.
In this country.
Yes. And then my son is Korean, and then he's in college. He just taking Korean class. Way he approach learning Korean is totally different than way how I approach to learn English. Just I stop there. Okay.
Hey, how else do you learn a language but through experience, right? That's the only way. That's the only way. It's the only way.
Yes.
We got to move on to the third poem because our time is limited.
Okay.
Definitely want the students to hear this is some poem. Wow.
Okay. Mustard flowers falling. 1. A yellow cab stops in the dark. Dark clouds cover half the moon. Water is boiling in the rusty kettle. She smells like peppermint. The cat's eyes like a neon sign. Outside the rainy window, you are reading a line in a poem, slowly, slowly. Petals of dried flowers drop on your knees. A woman leaves after brushing her teeth with a year-old toothbrush. 2. With a year-old toothbrush, after brushing her teeth, a woman leaves. Drop on your knees. Petals of the dry flowers. Slowly, slowly. You're reading a line in a poem. Outside the rainy window. The cat's eyes like a neon sign. She smells like peppermint. Water is boiling in the rusty kettle. Dark clouds cover half the moon. A yellow cab stops in the dark.
Yeah. I wonder what happened here. Anybody?
So it's called mirror poem, right? Like you kind of looking at the mirror. So if, I don't know if, did you catch it? Like the second poem starts backwards.
Right.
With your old toothbrush, and then it goes back. So how the middle poem's working, each sentence, each poem, each line of the poem could be totally independent with next poem. It doesn't have to be connect. So yellow cap stops in the dark. It's that line could stay alone and doesn't have to relate with next line. Dark clouds cover half the moon. So the mirror poem is like each line has to be independent, doesn't have to be connect with the next line. And also after you finish the poem and it goes backwards. And then same thing, when you write backwards from bottom to first, it has to be same happening, no attachment, each line stays independently, but still make a poem. How that sounds to you?
You know what I'd say here right off, since we only have 4 minutes left here.
Yes.
This poem is so cinematic. I'm picturing it like in a movie. It jumps from one scene, the yellow cab stops in the dark. Dark clouds hover half the moon. Water's boiling in the rusty kettle. So it's jumping scene. That is just so, I just love that effect. It's so vivid. I'm imagining it as it's going along. Yeah, and another thing I like about this poem is it's not necessarily conclusive, right? This is a poem you experience, and you can judge what you get from it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that's a great
like
quality.
so,
You don't see that in every poem. Most poems have a point of view, but this one, it's up to you. Yeah. Love it.
Yes.
Let me ask you a couple quick questions. We have 3 minutes.
Okay.
How did you get into poetry?
Oh, I always, even though when I was a kid, I think like I always write, and that I think it's very interesting question to answer for me and myself, as that like as I told you that I came from Korea, and of course I wrote in Korean first, and I thought it was just very, very hard for me to accept that I came to the United States, and then there's just so many people saying you can translate every kind of like literature or other things, but no poetry. It's just impossible to translate poetry. So I was just kind of sad that I wrote in Korean, and how am I going to write in English poetry?
So you had to
But
become a
then,
translator, right?
excuse me?
You had to become a translator.
Yeah, so that I start translate my poems. The only reason I translate my poems because I was in college, and then my friends knew that I wrote poems, so they wanted to listen and then see what I write. And so this is an interesting thing. It's like a poem is a very intimate thing, it's almost a private conversation. And I want them to know what I write. So that's how I start translate my poems to English. And then I thought, am I getting same emotion? Am I giving them same feeling that I wrote in Korean? That was tough, right? And then
Yeah,
more
hey, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have seconds to go in this recording. So I just want to thank both James and Tanya for sharing their poetry. We're out of time in just a few seconds because I had to use a different source today, and it only promised me up until just about this moment. I'm expecting a notice any second now that we have to finish our recording. But I'm going to try to get another minute squeezed in here. I'm just going to ask you a question anyway, even if the thing cuts us off.
Yeah.
What advice would you give young writers?
Oh, I hope every day you guys write, like start writing diary. That could be like really important, and then you could look back, and then you could see what you write at the time. It's just will surprise you. So please keep every morning write. Are we done?
We're still recording. Oh, no, we're done.
We're done? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you again.
But